There's a moment in life. It might happen quietly one evening when you're brushing your teeth, or violently after a sudden heartbreak, when you feel the first crack in the mirror of your identity. At first, you dismiss it. You've been doing everything right, haven't you? The job that pays the bills. The relationship that looks stable from the outside. The habits, the routines, the 5-year plan you could recite in your sleep. You've checked the boxes, one by one, as if life was a form to be filled out and handed back to the universe for approval. But then, it happens. You wake up one morning, stare at the ceiling, and a thought slips through before you can block it. This isn't me. And suddenly, it's not just a thought. It's a fracture. It's the first sign that the identity you've been carrying is not the truth of who you are, but a story you've been telling yourself because it was safer than asking the real question. If this isn't me, then who am I? Carl Jung believed this was the most important and the most dangerous moment in a human life. Because this is the threshold. You will either step through it and begin the long, uncertain journey of finding yourself, or you will turn away, pull the covers back over your head, and spend the rest of your years perfecting the art of sleeping with your eyes open. And make no mistake, the world will reward you for going back to sleep. It will praise your stability, admire your discipline, and envy your success. But deep down, you will know that you have chosen comfort over truth. From the moment you took your first breath, you were placed inside a carefully designed psychological cage. Not out of malice, but out of tradition. Your parents, your culture, your religion, your schooling, they all handed you an identity before you were old enough to say no. They told you what to believe, what to fear, what to admire, and what to avoid. They gave you a map of reality with all the dangerous areas marked "Do not enter" and all the safe areas stamped with gold stars. And because you were a child, you believed them. You had to. Survival depends on belonging, and belonging depends on obedience. If your authentic self threatened that belonging, you learned to hide it. The loud laughter, the tears, the daydreams, the questions that made adults uncomfortable, the strange curiosities that didn't fit the right path. You learned, without anyone needing to say it outright, be who they want you to be or risk losing love. Jung called the version of yourself you present to the world the persona, the mask that earns you acceptance. And masks are useful. They help us function in society. But here's the sinister part. If you wear the mask long enough, you start to believe it's your real face. You forget the sound of your own voice. You forget what you wanted before the world told you what you should want. And by the time you realize the truth, decades of your life have been lived as an actor in someone else's play. You become, in Jung's words, a well-adjusted slave, successful in the eyes of others, spiritually starving in the eyes of yourself. If the persona is what you show, the shadow is what you hide. But here's the twist most people miss. The shadow is not just your bad traits. It's everything you've been taught to reject about yourself, good or bad. It's your unspoken desires, your secret fears, your deepest wounds, your untapped talents that scared the people around you because they couldn't control them. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It waits. It festers. And then it starts to seep through the cracks of your life. You feel it when you explode at your partner over something small, and you know it wasn't really about the dishes. You feel it in the sharp sting of jealousy when a friend succeeds, even though you tell yourself you're happy for them. You feel it when you have an instant, irrational dislike for someone, and you can't quite explain why. These aren't random emotions. They are your shadow knocking on the door, demanding to be seen. As Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Think about that for a second. How many of your choices weren't really choices at all, but reflexes shaped by wounds you never faced? How many times have you just found yourself in the same type of relationship, the same job, the same fight, over and over again? That's not bad luck. That's your shadow running the show while your conscious mind thinks it's in charge. The tragedy is that within that shadow lies not only the parts of you you've feared, but also the parts of you you've been longing for. Your courage, your creativity, your ability to love without losing yourself. To meet your shadow is to risk seeing the truth, but to refuse is to guarantee that you will never live a life that is truly yours. Let's be honest, most people will never find themselves. Not because they lack the intelligence, but because they lack the courage. They feel the whisper of doubt. This isn't me. But instead of following it, they smother it under routines, Netflix, endless scrolling, and the small talk of small lives. They choose safety over truth. And safety is seductive. But there's a hidden bill for ignoring your real self. And it comes in many forms. The midlife crisis. You reach 40 or 50, look around, and realize you've been climbing a ladder that's been leaning against the wrong wall for decades. You thought success would feel like freedom. Instead, it feels like a sentence. Relationship collapse. You wake up next to someone you've been with for years and realize they fell in love with your mask, not your soul. And now, the more you take the mask off, the more the relationship cracks. Hidden self-destruction. You start to sabotage yourself without knowing why. You drink too much. You procrastinate. You wreck opportunities that could change your life, because somewhere deep inside, you don't want the life you're building. Quiet despair, the worst of them all. No drama, no explosions, just a dull, aching sense that no matter what you achieve, something essential is missing. And you can't tell anyone because to admit it would mean admitting that you've been living a lie. This is why Jung's warning cuts so deep. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, because if you do, your old life can't survive it. Jung discovered that inside every human being lives a set of ancient psychological patterns he called archetypes. They are not just ideas, they are forces. They shape your desires, your fears, your choices, and your destiny. They live in what Jung called the collective unconscious, the part of your psyche that isn't just yours, but shared with every human who has ever lived. Think of them as the deep blueprints of the human soul. Some of them you'll recognize immediately. The hero, the part of you that longs for purpose, for a quest, for transformation through challenge. It's the reason you feel alive when you overcome something hard. The shadow, the parts you reject and hide, both your darkness and your unclaimed strength. The adversary you must face to grow. The anima, animus, your inner feminine and inner masculine, the balance of intuition and logic, receptivity and action, softness and power. The sage, the inner voice of deep wisdom that surfaces when you're finally quiet enough to listen. The innocent child, the pure, uncorrupted part of you that remembers joy before shame, curiosity before fear. You don't get to choose whether these archetypes are in you. They are there. What you do get to choose is whether you live in blindness to them or you meet them face to face. If you ignore them, they control you from the shadows. If you learn their language, they can guide you. This is why, no matter where you were born or what century you live in, you feel pulled towards certain stories: the hero's journey, the wise mentor, the battle with the monster. Because those stories are not just entertainment. They are mirrors of your own inner life. Jung called the process of becoming your true self individuation. It sounds beautiful. In reality, it is brutal. Individuation is not self-improvement. It is self-confrontation. It's not about adding, it's about stripping away. To individuate, you must face your shadow and see the parts of yourself you've spent years denying. You will find both the things you feared and the things you secretly long to be. Question your story. Every belief about who you are and what life is, you must hold it up to the light and ask, is this mine or was it given to me? Integrate your opposites. You must embrace both your masculine and feminine energies, your light and your darkness, your chaos and your order, without rejecting one to feed the other. This path is not safe. It will cost you illusions, relationships, even entire versions of yourself. People around you might not understand. They might resist. They might prefer the old you, the predictable one. But here's the paradox. Every mask you remove feels like a death, yet each one reveals more life underneath. Individuation is the shedding of everything you are not, until what is left is so undeniably you that you can finally stand in the world without flinching. Theory is one thing, but the truth of Jung's ideas becomes undeniable when you see them in the lives of people who have walked through fire. Consider Viktor Frankl, a man who endured the unimaginable. He was stripped of his family, his home, his freedom, and placed inside the machinery of death known as the Nazi concentration camps. Every day he faced hunger, cruelty, and the constant shadow of death. And yet he found meaning, not in comfort, not in escape, but in suffering itself. Frankl discovered a truth so powerful it cannot be destroyed by any tyrant or tragedy. No one can take away your inner freedom unless you hand it to them. In the worst conditions humanity has ever known, he proved that the self, the true self, exists beyond circumstance. It is the one thing they cannot burn, starve, or chain. Now consider David Goggins, a man who began his life overweight, aimless, and lost in the haze of his own excuses. He wasn't in a concentration camp, but he was trapped all the same. His prison was built of self-deception, fear, and thesteries he told himself about what he could and couldn't do. One day he faced himself in the mirror, literally. And instead of turning away, he stayed. He confronted the truth without anesthetic, without excuse, without compromise. And in doing so, he tore down the mental walls he had lived behind for years. Through pain, discipline, and relentless self-honesty, he transformed into a man defined by endurance. Not just physical endurance, but the mental endurance to face life without running from it. Two men, two very different worlds, but both walked through the same door, the willingness to confront themselves fully. And in doing so, they became immune to the illusions that keep most of us chained. Jung wouldn't hand you a roadmap because no two paths are identical. But he would give you a set of tools, not to make the journey easier, but to make it possible. 1. Study your dreams. Your dreams are not random flickers of the brain. They are coded letters sent from your unconscious, written in a language of symbols and metaphors. The stranger in your dream, the house you keep returning to, the ocean you keep drowning in, they all mean something. Write them down. Reflect on them. Treat them as sacred messages from the parts of you you can't yet see. 2. Watch your projections. The things you most despise in others and the things you most admire are mirrors. If you hate arrogance, ask yourself, where am I afraid to be seen? If you admire someone's fearlessness, ask, what chains have I convinced myself are unbreakable? The world you see is a reflection of the world within you. Change one, and the other shifts with it. 3. Balance your inner energies. Inside you live both the anima and the animus, the feminine and the masculine, the intuitive and the rational, the receptive and the assertive. Society will tell you to favor one and suppress the other. But Jung knew wholeness comes when both sit at the same table. Strength without vulnerability is brittle. Vulnerability without strength is powerless. Integrate them and you become unshakable. 4. Stop distracting yourself. Silence is terrifying for most people, not because it is empty, but because it is full. Full of the truths we've been avoiding. This is why we fill every gap with noise, music, TV, the endless scroll of a glowing screen. But if you can sit long enough in the stillness to hear the voice beneath the noise, you will find the one guide who can never mislead you, yourself. And here's the part that stops most people cold. You are not who you think you are. You are not your job. You are not your personality type. You are not your past, your failures, your achievements, or the roles you've played so well that people believe they are you. You are something infinitely larger, older, and more mysterious than your mind can ever fully understand. You are the awareness behind the story, the vast consciousness watching it all unfold. Life does not truly begin on the day you are born. It begins on the day you are willing to let your false self die. That's why the journey to the real you feels like a death, because it is. The death of the mask. The death of the lies you told yourself to survive. The death of the version of you built by the hands of others. And what is born in its place is not fragile. It is not dependent on approval. It is not afraid of loss, because it knows nothing essential can be taken from it. This is why Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Because in that moment, the moment you stop running, the moment you meet yourself without turning away, you will realize you were never truly lost. You were simply waiting for yourself to come home.